Hello and welcome to another episode of Hawk Takes. This is Grayson and I am joined once again with Sezbad and Hess, who has not been on here for quite a while, have you?
No, I believe the last stream of yours that I was on was the one about China.
Oh yeah, that was quite a while back, but good to have you on. I know you specialize in Ukraine, so this episode might be good for, or however you want to put it, but anyway.
These people always have the hottest Ukraine takes. They're always the most cringy of all.
Yeah.
So who's gonna be a maker of the video today?
Oh, well, you probably see in a nice, it's called Real News Network.
Oh God.
It tells me that these blokes aren't going to be real news.
I don't know, it's just some sort of weird intuition I have.
Oh. Wait, can you hear that? Oh, did I forget to? Hold on. I'm just gonna make sure I'm just gonna make sure I shared audio. Okay, now it should be good. So,
All right.
even though not listening to it might be better, but that's not us. So that's not me anyway.
We nosedive into the bullshit to try and pick it apart.
It's the real news.
Okay, so already we're basically getting a Paul Joseph Watson ripoff.
Oh man. Yeah, like you said, this is probably going to be real news, quote unquote, in the sense of something that Trump would come up with.
It's more like a bootleg. It's like he filmed it on a camcorder in his basement. I mean, the
With
quality
like
is atrocious.
Green screen in the background.
Damn, bro, I hope Putin sees this. And
at least get some production values. RT has those.
I'm Aaron Mate. A surge of neo-Nazi.
I heard of Aaron Mate before, but I can't put my finger on it. And it rings a bell, but I actually can't think.
I think he's one of the gray zone people.
Oh yeah. Well, you have to be. He was Max Blumenthal.
Yeah, no, he's like third amongst them for the most known shitty takes on Twitter.
Yeah. Of course, no one beat Benjamin Norton.
Oh man, nobody beats that guy.
There are cows. They're like mildew farms that wish they could come up with as much shit as he does.
Nazism and anti-Semitism in Eastern Europe has a strong U.S. tie.
I think has a strong Russian tie.
Yeah, and also not just recently, going way back when. The reason why these countries have more anti-Semitism than the West is because the communist regimes in the past made no real effort to educate that out of the people. It's like they just banned it and called it a day while engaging in more subtle anti-Semitic rhetoric of their own. That's why.
Funnily enough, the areas that were under control by Austria-Hungary before the Soviet took over, they were actually probably some of the lesser anti-Semitic places because Austria-Hungary was probably the most friendly towards the Jewish population.
Oh, yes. No, before World War I, that definitely was the case. But no, like I said, there were no real efforts by the communists to get rid of these ideas. It swept it under the rug.
The Polish Senate has approved a law that criminalizes the assigning of responsibility to Polish nationals for the crimes of the Nazi Holocaust.
Probably because they were victims of the Holocaust.
Yeah, no, like there's honest criticisms of this law, but just the underlying motive is an understandable one. They don't want it to become some sort of common knowledge that Poland was the country that committed the Holocaust rather than Germany. And like the German foreign ministry actually agrees with them on this. They have reiterated that Germany was the culprit. But this common phrase, Polish death camps, is one that spreads misconceptions. So that's what this law was intended to combat.
And for using the term Polish death camp. Poland's far-right government is a close U.S. ally and was openly embraced by President Trump in a visit last July.
Ooh, spooky. By the way, you know whose fault it is that kind of Eastern Europe is probably more on the right-wing spectrum?
The Soviets?
Yeah, it probably has nothing to do with like 45 years of left-wing policy. Makes you kind of...
Yeah, a failed policy that caused mass poverty and stagnation and misery of all sorts.
Yeah. Like, yeah, when they were suppressing essentially your national identity, you're probably going to see some nationalism rise when you're allowed to do it again.
Yeah, it's called a backlash, and it's completely understandable.
And meanwhile, in Ukraine, it has just been revealed that the U.S. has supplied military assistance to the Azov Battalion, a far-right militia known as a bastion of neo-Nazism within the Ukrainian armed.
Well, to the Azov Battalion, I mean, from what I've read, it's a little bit more than just necessarily neo-Nazis. They're all like Ukrainian nationalists, though. From what I've read, not all of them are actually neo-Nazis. Some of them have actually denounced Nazism, and some of them...
Not only that, they're mostly Russian-speaking locals of eastern Ukraine. So this portrayal of them as some sort of Russophobic ultra-nationalist group is a bit inaccurate for that reason. Like, they are patriots of Ukraine, but they don't go around killing Russian speakers, is the thing.
Exactly.
Forces.
You were saying?
Oh, I was just going to explain some context behind the Azov Battalion. Well, what happened in 2014 was basically everyone was given a weapon and sent to the front lines because the Ukrainian military was only at like 6% combat readiness. And because of that, they had to rely on these militias. Over time, however, there's been a tightening of the leash on them. They have been incorporated into the National Guard, separate from the armed forces. But as far as how things were in 2014, I would say the government has a lot tighter leash on them than there used to be.
Yeah, and was there also a problem of like pro-Russian officers betraying and switching sides, or did that not happen very much?
It happened in Crimea.
And there was like fake news too, spread by RT, that the flagship of the Ukrainian Navy had raised the Russian flag when in fact it had not.
Yeah, it was Russian soldiers boarded the ships, raised the Russian flag, and then they later claimed, oh, look at the Ukrainian soldiers. They're raising the Russian flag.
And like the Ukrainians got control of the ship again, right? And they sailed it back to port in Odessa.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
Max Blumenthal is a best-selling author and senior editor of The Gray's.
Oh. That's a fancy way to say con artist.
Yeah, I'm going to push them on their definition of best-selling here.
But to be fair, it probably is a New York Times bestseller because literally all you have to do is write a book and you'll...
Yeah, no, it's a surefire way to get noticed.
His own project. His recent piece, published by The Real News, is called "The U.S. is Arming and Assisting Neo-Nazis in Ukraine While Congress Debates Prohibition."
I don't know what he means by prohibition, but we'll continue. See what.
Welcome, Max. Let's start with what you have reported for The Real News about Ukraine. You call this a truly scandalous episode of close to covert U.S. support for neo-Nazism.
By the way, should we just talk about the Alliance of Peace and Freedom in Europe, which is the largest organization of neo-Nazi parties? And who is the largest backer? Oh, yeah, that's right, the Russian government.
Yeah, that's right, the Russians. And not only that, Russia is like one of the highest neo-Nazi populations in the world. And not just in informal context, they also join groups like the Wagner Group, who've been active in Syria and Libya. And like I've seen pictures, they've spray painted swastikas on buildings over there. It's really fucked up. So like they don't have the right to wag a finger at anyone else over the presence of neo-Nazis.
Also, I was just going to say this, and then you can say your thing you want to say first, but I'm just going to... Isn't it kind of ironic that neo-phalangists are now simping Russia?
Well,
Like, didn't you guys used to fight these people a lot? But you were going to say, Pest?
Oh, I was just gonna say real quick. Do they ever mention like the far right militias on the Russian side? For instance, there's a militia group called the Russian Orthodox Army, and there's also the members of the National Bolshevik Front. They're also fighting for Russians on the Russian side, but for some reason, Ukraine is put out as the unique evil in this situation.
Yeah, no, like those Russian Nazis I mentioned, they're also on the front line in eastern Ukraine as well. And not only them, but members of the Greek Golden Dawn have also been recorded as fighting on the Russian side in that conflict. You know, that neo-Nazi party that was just banned for being a neo-Nazi party.
But, there's no mention of that because that would,
Their
would
funds
make-
would be at risk.
yeah. Especially since that they need to paint Russia as somehow this anti-fascist power, despite Russia probably being one of the closest nations to fascism.
In the world today.
Well, there are some to be fair, there are some nations that do give them a run for their money. Syria, Iran, China. I mean, you got
Yeah,
competitors.
they're up against stiff competition, I'd say.
Yeah.
Of Ukraine Party, which was a neo-Nazi white nationalist party founded by a street demagogue named Andrei Beletsky, who has pledged to restore the honor of the white race, in his words, as through his national or social national party in the Ukrainian parliament, advanced laws forbidding race mixing, this kind of thing. And the Azov Battalion.
Yeah, the thing is, those type of groups have been on the rise all over Europe, though. This isn't exclusively Ukraine. It's like,
Yeah, in Hungary, in Greece, in France. And it goes back to what you said earlier. It's concern trolling that they're focusing on the Ukrainian ones in order to benefit the Russians who are paying for whatever this is, most likely.
I mean, the most concerning one is definitely the Slovakian neo-Nazi party because they've actually been getting seats and they got 10% of the vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I really wanted to mention about that was that the only reason this whole thing became so prominent was that a war broke out, and obviously these far-right groups were able to form militias on the front. But other than that, where are their seats in parliament? They have none. Ukraine has no far-right presence in its parliament. And other European countries, like Slovakia, like Hungary, for instance, they actually have far-right parties in parliament. So I don't know where they're getting at this. Like, this is somehow uniquely Ukrainian.
Yeah, not just in parliament. In Hungary's case, depending on whether if you define Fidesz as far right, they're in power. And one thing I heard about Ukraine was that 3 far-right parties ran on a combined ticket in 2014, and they received 0.7% of the vote together, and like less than they had before Yanukovych was overthrown.
And
So it's just no. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just saying, don't they think that if you're a far-right Ukrainian nationalist, odds are you are probably going to fight for your country. Just saying.
Yeah, no, it's totally natural that these people would want to fight against Russia, even alongside all the perfectly decent people who would want to defend their country, you know?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I mean, like there are always bad people who do fight for a good cause.
No, yeah, humans aren't angels. When you have a mass movement, you're going to have some bad apples, always.
Like most World War II soldiers, I mean, the Western Allies, they were pretty good, but there were also some pretty terrible people that were in the ranks. But will also not be, those were more of the exception, not the rule.
True. And don't forget they fought in alliance with the Soviet Union at that time, which was not nearly as bad as Nazi Germany, but still pretty bad. But fighting alongside them was still justified, you know? Anybody against Hitler was our friend.
Yeah.
Became active after the civil war began in the Donbass region in eastern Ukraine, when pro-Russian separatists sought to secede, partly because of the neo-Nazi incipiency in Kiev. They didn't want any part of it. They speak Russian. Their language is not going to be recognized by the new government. And so the Azov Battalion was ultimately incorporated into the country's National Guard and military.
Was they incorporated, or was it still like divided, or is it just divided still?
Well, officially the Azov Battalion is incorporated into the National Guard, but one has to remember the National Guard are like the second-rate Ukrainian force. They're not even part of the formal armed forces. The National Guard is a part-time gendarmerie force. They don't even receive the best equipment. The good stuff goes first to the army, and then whatever's left over goes to the National Guard. So, yeah.
No, and the other thing is he's painting the Donbass secessionists as some sort of grassroots movement. Yes, there was some popular support for those ideas, but it was mostly incited and paid for by Russia, who funneled arms to them and sort of fomented insurrection in Ukraine in response to the government that was overthrown. And no, this new government has not banned Russian language.
Well, what the interesting part about is that they call this an organic uprising, but where did they get all those tanks from? The separatists suddenly they have T-72s, T-80s, and T-90s in some cases, and yet they still pretend like this is just locals uprising against the Ukrainian government.
Well, you don't find T-80s in the woods?
Yeah, we just brought them out of our garages, bro. Yeah. We had a T-90 tank locked up. It was a gift for my son's birthday, but now we're going to use it against the Ukrainian army.
Yeah, that's not believable in Ukraine. If it was Florida, that'd be a different story. But
not in Ukraine. But yeah, both the tanks and the anti-aircraft missiles, which, they used to shoot down airliners.
Yeah, now again, if we're talking about Florida, then your story would actually be believable.
Oh, totally.
They probably would shoot them.
That's a total Florida man story for you.
Through the Ministry of...
We need to send Florida man to Ukraine.
No, yeah, he'd have made short work of them.
Yeah, take out that Texas guy who's like the Texas trader who's fighting for Russia. We send Florida man to
beat the shit out of him. That would be the best superhero fight ever.
I'd pay to watch that.
Yeah.
Interior through Arsen Avakov, who's been basically a supporter of its agenda all along. He also at one point installed another figure from Patriot of Ukraine, Dmitry Yarosh, as the police commissioner in Kiev. This is another neo-Nazi figure. And, all along we saw these denials, especially in 2014 during the Maidan so-called Revolution of Dignity, which was actually a right-wing nationalist coup against a democratically elected government.
I really don't understand the logic of calling Maidan a coup d'etat simply because, there weren't really any state forces involved. It was mostly protesters fighting police. And could the guy who's an expert on Ukraine correct me on this if I'm wrong? Because there wasn't the army really wasn't involved.
I mean, no, they were paralyzed. They weren't even in battle positions when they weren't even ready when the Russian invasion happened. What happened was in Maidan was that there was mass clashes in the capital. Yanukovych ordered the police to open fire on the demonstrators, killing 100 people. This act was so shocking that Yanukovych's own party in parliament voted to remove him. So, like, the Ukrainian parliament voted that Yanukovych had overstepped his bounds, and he's no longer president now. And what happened? Yanukovych fled to Russia, packing on a helicopter.
I mean,
No,
to be
yeah.
fair, this guy probably considers this guy has considered elections coups before, so it's not that surprising.
Yeah, not surprising at all. And like he's ignoring the overall reason for the protests. There was this very popular EU association agreement that Yanukovych suddenly, quote unquote, decided not to sign and decided to incorporate and chose to incorporate the country more closely with Russia. And that was very unpopular. And people protested en masse against that, and it snowballed.
We heard liberal voices like Timothy Snyder or neoconservative operatives like Jamie Kirchick deny the very existence.
He said the neocons. He gave a shout out to my people.
The eternal neocons everywhere.
Yeah. Funniest thing when they talk about neocons, it's either that we're an irrelevant ideology and we control everything.
Yes, Schrodinger's neocon.
Of neo-Nazism in the ranks of the Maidan. Now I think it's very clear that Azov is on the march, and I'll get to that in a minute. What I did here at The Real News was compile a series of reports, including from Azov's own website, that demonstrate that U.S. military trainers have visited Azov in the field to train and exchange logistical information. They appeared in uniform with Azov battalion.
They say Sikel salute. I'm no expert. I don't think that's a Sikel salute.
Yeah, it looks like they're waving to the camera, at least just from this angle.
That looks like the laziest Roman salute ever. Like did they just wake up or something? Like they're trying to hail Hitler, but they're like
Hail Hitler.
Exactly.
Hail whoever he is. I'm too drunk.
And it's like the sort of guys who draw hilariously misshapen swastikas on bridges or something.
Battalion members who are wearing the Wolf's Angel patch, which is a Nazi SS symbol, a runic neo-Nazi symbol on their arm. This is just a scandalous spectacle. Not only.
Well, the thing with, again, like maybe the Ukraine expert knows more about that symbol. From what little I've read about it, it seems to be that was a Ukraine. They at least see it as like a Ukrainian symbol and don't necessarily associate it with a neo-Nazi symbol, though.
Yeah, it's like one of those symbols that's like been reappropriated, but it's like it's got some yikesy history, despite the fact that they'll deny that it has any significance to Nazism.
It would be kind of like the Iron Cross. That wasn't exactly a Nazi symbol, but had a pretty big yikes.
Used by the German Air Force and armed forces to this day.
Yeah. Surprised that isn't. I'm surprised he doesn't mention that. Probably will at one of these videos when he needs to like milk something.
Yeah, when he tries. Yeah, when Germany like refuses to sign a trade pact with Russia or something, he'll bring that up. Just on the side, bro.
That contracts have been revealed showing that the Texas-based Airtronic Arms Company has produced PSRL-1 grenade launchers that were actually authorized under the watch of the state.
Ooh, it's a Texas-based company. Maybe they're trying to just make up for their rogue agent.
I'd hope so.
Yeah. They'd probably be like, all right, here he is. Go find him.
If only they could hire Florida Man.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's too busy. We haven't heard from him since he raided Air Force Area 51. He's still missing. God knows where he is.
God knows where. Yeah, I'm surprised. I thought he was Donald Trump's bodyguard at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah. Maybe that's what he's doing. He's a busy man.
Truly.
He can't liberate them all.
State Department and delivered directly into the hands of the Azov Battalion. So the U.S. has armed Azov. Azov actually.
But this is a U.S. company, so I mean they're not violating any rules because I don't think the Azov Battalion has any sanctions on it.
Yeah, no, because like we haven't confirmed that it's a terrorist organization or anything. We consider it what, if not part of the Ukrainian military, just a legitimate actor to sell arms to.
Scrubbed photographs from its website that showed them in the field with those very weapons. One reason this is significant is because the Azov Battalion functions in a lot of ways like ISIS has in Syria and Iraq.
Except they aren't. That's a stupid comparison.
ISIS?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no. Okay, I know it's like the Azov Battalion is controversial. They're not that controversial.
Yeah, come back to me when they start crucifying people or something. Then again, Russian state propaganda, I believe, has accused them of that, of like crucifying Russian-speaking children. It's all total horseshit.
Yeah, which later proven to be false. And they always focus on the Azov Battalion because I don't know if they haven't noticed. Azov is like one battalion in the entire Ukrainian army on the front lines, and yet they just focus on this one battalion, saying it's ISIS when that's ridiculous. Like, Azov Battalion has not run slave operations. They have not committed ethnic cleansing. Most of the people in Azov Battalion are Russian speakers, and I don't know if they haven't noticed, but the war has been frozen for the past 6 years. So all Azov's been doing is just sitting on the trenches.
Yeah, and it's like the reason they do that is it's the only unit fighting alongside the Ukrainian army that has anything remotely resembling a controversial symbol, like that Volksangel thing. So they give it all sorts of disproportionate attention because it's the worst thing they can find.
Where it receives foreign fighters. It's received sniper training from a Swedish military veteran, and it received a French farmhand named Georges Monteau. At some point in 2016, Monteau returned from Azov camps in the east with a trove of weapons that was enormous. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of pounds of C4 explosives, automatic weapons, and grenade launchers, and he was on his way to Western Europe to attack a soccer festival and carry out attacks on synagogues and mosques. This would have been one of the most significant terror attacks in recent European history. So it seems
like some crazed guy who more or less took over, who tried to more abuse them into. I don't think they just willy-nilly handed him a bunch of C4 and ammo.
Yeah, it's almost like it's almost like there's a very just cause they're fighting for that a lot of people are willing to contribute stuff towards.
Scandalous episode. And now we've learned in the last week that the Azov Battalion has formed a national corps, which is both a political party and a street militia that is deployed into the.
Anyway, do you think they ever mentioned stuff like the SSNP, the Syrian neo-Nazi party, which is in the government in Syria?
Exactly, and he mentioned the National Corps, which is the Azov Battalion's political arm. Ask him how many seats do they have in Ukraine overall. I want to see his reaction when he finds out there's none.
Yeah. Honestly, I think he does know that. But he's also a propagandist.
Yeah, it's not in his interest to mention that, or the Russian or Syrian neo-Nazis.
Streets of Kiev, a neo-Nazi militia is deployed into Kiev. They're not fighting pro-Russian separatists. They're there to, quote unquote, restore law and order. And this is part of the wider agenda of the far-right nationalist and neo-Nazi movement in Ukraine. It's called the Reconquista. It's been spelled out by Andrei Beletsky, their chief ideologue. And the idea is to essentially recapture the so-called white countries of Europe, Ukraine being the bastion of the white reconquest of Europe. And so you have hundreds of armed neo-Nazi militias.
Out of a country of millions.
Yeah, it's like he's giving tons and tons of attention to this tiny fringe group. Like, yeah, a lot of neo-Nazi organizations in Europe and the US probably have similar platforms to this, but we wouldn't go around and portray them as imminently about to take over us all. That's what this guy's doing with Ukraine, right?
And again, those ever noticed when they're marching that they they're constantly reusing the footage?
Yeah, it's the same like 3 videos every time.
Because realistically, there's not many of them. And the reason they're in Kiev is probably because it's the most populated city. They probably have the most Ukrainians, and so they probably are the most extremists there.
Yeah, just law of large numbers. But no. Oh my god. No, just terrible propaganda
right now. They've actually interrupted a city council meeting. They took over a city council meeting in central Ukraine, and it's beginning to look like a putsch. President Poroshenko is weaker than ever. He's even been denounced by the Kiev Post, which is basically an arm of the pro-NATO Atlantic Council. He's, I don't know why, getting attacked by all of the pro-Maidan Western commentators. And meanwhile,
probably because of his more corruption. Because even though he's definitely better than the former president, he's still pretty corrupt.
Yeah, that's an issue in Ukraine. And as it ultimately transpired, there was no coup against him by this fringe neo-Nazi group this guy's harping on. So I just don't get these people.
I mean, and he's actually I don't know why he has such a problem with a democracy where the press attacks their own president. I mean, would that ever happen in Russia? It's like in Ukraine, the press attacked their president viciously and he lost the election. It's unthinkable in Belarus or Russia. So I don't know I don't see that as a problem. So.
This neo-Nazi putsch is happening completely beneath the radar of U.S. media.
It's also apparently happening beneath the radar of the votes. 1%, not even 1%.
Yeah, and it's like, if Ukrainian media is freely criticizing their president, is it really some sort of neo-fascist dictatorship, as these people have claimed before?
I mean, the Nazis couldn't win an election, so they occupied a town council meeting and the police escorted them out. Therefore, proof of a neo-Nazi coup.
Yeah, just you wait till these guys are the government of Ukraine. It's gonna happen any day, you guys.
Yeah, trust the plan.
Yeah, and it's absolutely terrifying, not only to the Jewish community of Ukraine, but to average Ukrainians.
You know, Max, in the piece.
Well, yeah. It's almost as if average Ukrainians, 99% of them don't support that specific group. Almost as if they have no popular support.
Yeah, no. For some mysterious reason, they've faded from prominence. And only people like Max here are harping on them constantly. Yeah, this guy's the best asset they have to keep them in the limelight.
Yeah, and I mean, again, to be fair, even if they did, even if these 1% were even even if they were like 5% or something more radical, I'm pretty sure they're more concerned about that 25% who's trying to occupy the country.
Yeah, that's a far more pressing concern to your average Ukrainian, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure most Ukrainians are probably more fearful of Russia than some French neo-Nazi group.
Yeah.
You quote anti-Nazi activist Ephraim Zurov, who says that Ukraine has more statues for killers of Jews than any other country.
How many statues of Stalin exist in Russia?
Yeah, good point.
Well, you know, any nation that like Libya before the overthrow of Gaddafi or Iraq before the overthrow of Saddam.
Yeah, I'm sure they had plenty of those.
Like also, even like under the monarchist Russians, they were extremely anti-Semitic, and they probably have like
They probably have some statues of pictures of the czars all over the place. That doesn't signal impending neo-Nazi takeover.
I found that efforts in the U.S. Congress to bar the delivery of weapons to neo-Nazis in Ukraine, but
who is named? Who are their names?
Trust the plan, bro. I knew this person once. Believe me, they're real, 100%.
they've been defeated. Is that right?
Well, they haven't been defeated. They've been continually pulled from congressional defense authorization bills, and there is one prohibition that's on the that's been proposed. The House Appropriations Bill contains the language forbidding weapons to Azov, but in the meantime, while Congress did.
Geez, it's almost as if Azov is not a terrorist organization, and the U.S. really couldn't give two craps about it because it's not really a national security concern.
Yeah, not a concern either in Ukraine or America.
They're probably more concerned about, I don't know, groups like Al Qaeda, ISIS, the Taliban. You know,
yeah,
a little more pressing matters.
Yes. Than this Ukrainian party that won 0.7% of the vote in an election, and some of whose members once angrily broke into a regional council.
Honestly, the American alt-right is probably more of a concern to the U.S. than any Ukrainian.
Yeah. After all, they literally stormed the Capitol here.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
The Trump administration authorized a shipment of tandem anti-tank missiles, extremely advanced anti-tank missiles from Raytheon. The U.S.'s envoy to Ukraine, Kurt Volker, who is connected to Raytheon through various means, which
Again, what I'm guessing here is that the U.S. is only really arming the Azov battalion because as long as they're a part of the Ukrainian military, you're supporting the Ukrainian military. That does mean you're going to support the Azov battalion.
Yeah, just because we're sending arms to the Ukrainian army, and some of those consequently end up in the arms of groups like the Azov battalion.
Yeah, especially since, as Pes said, that they have a title control over the Azov battalion now. So I mean,
It's not some unhinged terrorist group like, I don't know, the Wagner Group, which fights as mercenaries in Syria.
And apparently they also fight now in Venezuela now too.
Oh God, there too? Jeez.
Yeah, and apparently they're also in Mozambique. And Probably places where the people don't want them. I mean, the government want them, but the people.
No, they do not. Yes, no. The people of Ukraine like the Azov Battalion far more than the people of any of these countries like the Wagner Group. I'll say that much.
Yeah, like also, I don't think Russian soldiers in your country has ever had a high approval.
Anywhere, anytime.
Not even in Russia, to be honest.
Considering the most common times you see them in the streets of Moscow is, dispersing protesters.
I explained in a separate article that Truthdig is in favor of this arms shipment, and it's inevitable that it will reach Azov because, as I said, Azov has been absorbed into the national Ukrainian military and are considered some of the best fighters. Another point is that,
well, again, if that's somehow true that the Azov battalions are considered some of the best fighters, then strategically, wouldn't you want the best fighters in your army? And
yeah, it's just a matter of interests. Like,
and also, having them in your army makes them easier to control too. It's like you have a win-win situation. You have some of the best fighters, and you can control them easier.
Absolutely, and you're not going to go against your own national interest because some rando commentator on YouTube is throwing a shit fit.
If you look at the 600 or so Azov National Corps members who deployed to Kiev to restore national order, just the cost of their coats alone would cost over $1.7 million, according to several Ukrainian media sources. So who's paying the bills for them? How are they able to maintain advanced weaponry, such high-level uniforms? All of these questions suggest that they're operating hand in glove with the Ukrainian government, specifically the Interior Ministry of Arsen Avakov.
So let's talk about Poland. You have this law just passed this week.
Oh God, are they going to accuse Poland of being a neo-Nazi state?
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm pretty sure they will.
Yeah, I mean, other than the whole being invaded by neo-Nazis, being oppressed by the Nazis,
Yeah, no, it's like Holocaust denial in and of itself is not a phenomenon in Poland because, they have Auschwitz there. It mostly takes the form of denying that Poles helped the Nazis. Certain far-right groups do that. But these guys are going to twist that all out of shape.
Week by the Polish Senate that criminalizes the criticism, essentially, of Poland's role in the Nazi Holocaust.
Or to be fair, I don't know how you really do criticize people for being in camps.
For getting invaded, getting slaughtered, and forming one of the strongest resistance movements in occupied Europe. They were like, depending on the source, either the largest or the second largest after Yugoslavia.
Yeah, some Poles did help the Nazis, but so did some Russians.
Yeah, so did people from all around Europe collaborated with the Nazis. They have no right to pin it on anyone.
It wasn't even just people from Europe. It was also people from India. There were Middle Easterners who.
Yeah, no, not many people noticed there was a brief of British invasion of Iraq in World War II because they had a pro-Nazi coup d'etat.
There was even this alleged story that apparently some Native American chief worked with the Nazis and apparently according to the story, they were going to organize this massive resistance against the U.S. if Nazi Germany invaded, but
it came to nothing,
And they were all sorts of Nazi collaborators
all around the world, man.
Struck by the language from the State Department in response to this. It was very mild. They talked about it jeopardizing strategic relationships, saying that the resulting divisions that may arise among our allies benefits only our rivals.
But that's true. It's
just objectively.
Yeah, I mean, that would almost certainly only help Russia.
Yeah, what does this guy expect us to do? Work in the against our own interests and in those of our enemy?
Like, that's the thing. That's why it's like you can't really call these people anti-war. They claim to be. They're not. Like, if the U.S. was to one day just, I don't know who would be crazy enough to do this, but let's just say one day some U.S. president, Tulsi Gabbard, decides to take over and decides to send American troops to invade Ukraine and help Russia with the occupation. Do you think they would oppose that?
They'd make all the excuses in the world, and we're fighting Nazi coup mongers or whatever.
Yeah.
No, it's just pure and simple. Anything America is against, I'm in favor of. It's campism. It's childish. That's all I have to say about it.
Well, if they're against America, we should just be like, yeah, America supports Russia. Then they have to be against Russia. Yes, go Venezuelan regime. Oh, crap. We have to support the opposition now.
Hey, at least we could bait them into doing that. If we should convince them that, yeah, we should have convinced them that Trump was secretly on Russia's side. Henceforth, they'd have to support all these types.
Mild words there from the U.S. towards a very close ally, openly embraced by Donald Trump. Your thoughts? Your thoughts on the role of the U.S. in supporting the Polish government, and also one of your areas of focus.
Well, technically, I guess these guys did get a win today because Biden decided to lift the sanction on that Russian oil company. So, again, kind of irrelevant, but just thought I should mention that.
No, it's totally relevant.
Yeah.
Are they happy now?
You know, they're never happy.
As a rule.
Yeah. They'll give Biden 2 days of praise and then go back to hating him.
Yeah.
That was still such a. I still want to know. Don't, especially since you just unsigned the Keystone Pipeline. Aren't you supposed to be against oil now? But now you're suddenly for oil, but only when your enemies do. Like,
only when it's the Nord Stream.
Yeah.
Which is Israel, which also has developed ties to Poland, although they have criticized.
Okay, so welcome to apparently these people's ideas of neo-Nazi unions are apparently Poland and Israel.
Two countries whose citizens suffered immensely at the hands of the Nazis. And like portraying them as in the same league is also a load of BS, because there was a big spat in 2018 between Poland and Israel over this very law they're discussing.
Yeah.
This legislation.
Yeah, I mean, first I should mention that Ukraine has enacted very similar legislation forbidding, basically banning any Ukrainian citizen from condemning Nazi collaborators like Stepan Bandera or Roman Shukevich.
Well, I know that's definitely a controversial subject. I'm going to say this, though. Sometimes I can at least see where they were coming from because, you know, when you're if you want a Jew in Ukraine, you're probably better collaborating with the Nazis than you were with the Soviets, given what
the Nazis wanted to exterminate them in the future too, but given how the Soviets had just starved anyone to death, it is understandable, if not justified, per se.
Exactly, and I just have to clarify some things. You can criticize Stepan Bandera in Ukraine. Max is exaggerating here. Like, we can argue whether or not his rehabilitation by the Ukrainian authorities is justified or not. But as far as them saying you can't condemn him, lie.
Who've had streets and boulevards and memorials named for them across
Funny thing is, I think the only country where you can't condemn historical figures in Europe is Russia.
Yeah, no, it's not so much historical figures. You can't criticize Russia's role in World War II, is the thing.
Yeah, you can't. Because, like, from 1939 to 1940, Russia was the biggest collaborator.
Yeah,
Oh.
provided them with all sorts of essential raw materials. It kept their war effort going and, ironically enough, enabled them to attack the Soviet Union later on.
And
Like, and here's another thing to think about. Like, with all the talks of collaborators, let's just say, hypothetically, Germany was a democratic country. France and Britain decided to make an intervention. All those Nazi collaborators would still be collaborators. They'd just be for liberal countries.
Yeah, true. A lot of their biggest concerns were independence, not necessarily ideological sympathies.
this is where I actually expected to get into a little bit more context here. Can they actually name the massacre or any pogrom that Bandera ordered? You know why they can't? Because there were Ukrainian collaborators. That's no question about it. But who was Stepan Bandera? When the Nazis invaded Lviv, he proclaimed the independence of Ukraine, saying Ukraine is now independent. The Nazis arrested him, and he spent most of the war in a concentration camp. And he was only released towards the end of the war, where he was used as a propagandist to convince Ukrainians to rise against the Soviets. So he spent the last year of the war running a newspaper. So, I mean, he was a terrible person, but let's not exaggerate him.
Yeah, I guess that's just sort of karma when somebody the Nazis deemed to be a Slavic Untermensch tried to side with them. Like, his importance to Ukrainian history in that period is blown way out of proportion by both Russian propaganda, direct Russian propaganda, and people like the Gray Zone.
Ukraine. These are the Jew killers that Ephraim Razorov was referring to. In fact, Stepan Bandera Boulevard in Kiev leads to Babi Yar, one of the sites of Jewish slaughter that's remembered in Holocaust history.
Yeah. Here's something to consider, though. Russia sent tens of thousands of Jews to the gulags. It's like they sent pretty much anyone who was religious to the gulag because religion was like the biggest.
Yeah,
Right,
no,
because-
and like he systematically suppressed Jewish culture, secular and religious, closed down newspapers, closed down synagogues, launched a campaign against rootless cosmopolitans. I think we know how that turned out.
And once again, Stepan Bandera, he was in a concentration camp while Babi Yar happened. So
Yeah, I don't know why they're trying to blame him for this.
It's just disgusting to me. And it should be to everyone else. American Jewish organizations have been very silent on this matter. In Poland, the government, the Law and Justice government, this right-wing nationalist government, which received Trump very warmly. You know, Trump gave that speech where he echoed a lot of their language about the clash of civilizations.
Yeah. I'm more concerned about the nationalist government that controls 140 million people.
I wonder what that could be.
Yeah.
And values, has enacted, a law forbidding Polish citizens, or the Senate has passed a law forbidding Polish citizens from referring to Polish death camps. Essentially, they want to delete the extensive collaboration of Polish citizens, including people who are considered heroes by Polish nationalists today, from the annals of the Holocaust, because they were Nazi collaborators. They were war criminals who were involved in the mass slaughter.
There were very few explicitly collaborationist groups in Poland. There was no puppet government, amongst other things. There was no equivalent of Vichy France over there. And what the Polish government wants to emphasize is that their country had one of Europe's strongest resistance movements, one that had an explicit agency, the Żegota it was called, to protect Jews. And it's like, it was the Polish government in exile that first alerted the world about the Holocaust. based on the Karski report. These are the sort of things they want people to know, rather than just seeing Poland as a Nazi collaborator country. That's why this law was ever a thing.
Also, again, there's another interesting fact. When the Poles rose up against the Germans in the Warsaw Uprising, America and Britain, the only thing they could do was send air support because they were too far away.
And because the Soviet Union was forbidding its airfields to them to supply aid to the Poles.
And the Soviets constantly refused aid. They didn't want the Poles to liberate themselves.
Yeah, no, they did not want any large anti-communist armed force in Poland that had a pristine record of fighting the Nazis and could conceivably form a challenge to the puppet government they planned to put into power. So no, like, these people know nothing about Poland.
Industrial slaughter of Jews. Israeli government has been very upset about this week. Israeli media has been turning to the so-called bubbies, the grandmothers who came to Israel after the Holocaust out of the displaced persons camps. But one of the things that hasn't been really mentioned in Israeli media is the fact that the Israeli government last year signed a memorandum of understanding with the Polish Law and Justice government. And part of that memorandum of understanding was that Israel recognizes Poland's need to ban expressions relating to Polish death camps.
Well, yeah.
Because they want to be accurate. They want to recognize the historical record, and they see Poland's perspective and Poland's grievances in these circumstances. It was a very rational move.
Yeah, exactly. And Polish death camps is a stupid idea. Well, there were Polish collaborators in the camps, but the camp was run by the SS.
Yeah, they were run by the Germans. Like, most stages of the extermination of Jews were carried out by the Germans. That's just a sad fact. And like, yeah, a lot of Jews, like probably several 100,000, died as the result of Polish collaborators, but the vast majority of the 3 million, it was all the SS.
And again, a lot of Poles was in the camps as well.
Yeah, no, it's like they were not in much of a position to save their fellow citizens en masse. They focused on each other.
Camps. Israel just signed on to that. They basically signed on to the legislation that their government is condemning. And, you know, why did they do that? Well, Israel has a long history in the Zion.
Well, they didn't really sign in on it. They more recognized where they were coming from.
Yeah, look, the other side had decent points and tried to reach an understanding. They're not denying any aspect of the Holocaust.
The Zionist movement has a long history of collaborating with anti-Semites, including Nazi Germany.
What?
They're probably talking about the Havara Agreement, but that was a way to save Jews from the Nazis. It was like a cruel pact made at an unfortunate time. They just felt they needed to do anything to get these people out of there.
Yeah,
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it was an act of desperation. At this point, the situation in Jews in Germany had become so bad that you just needed to get them out at any cost, even if that meant signing an agreement with Hitler.
Yeah, and as for the other anti-Semites, it was for a similar reason, like, for instance, the Russian Tsar.
To advance its own narrow national interests. In this case, we recently saw Poland abstain from a UN vote condemning Israel over the Trump and condemning the Trump administration's recognition of Jerusalem.
Again, that probably just seems like
National interest.
Yeah, again, it also doesn't seem like why would again, like if these guys are so-called non-interventionists, why should Poland care about something that doesn't affect their nation?
Yes, only non-interventionists when they think it benefits them.
I wonder how they feel about Serbia now that Serbia recognized Jerusalem as the Israeli capital.
No, you guys are supposed to be anti-imperialists. No, we bravely defended your genocide record in the 90s. Why are you doing this now?
But seriously though, the Serbia-Kosovo agreement was probably one of the more underrated things Trump did.
Oh yeah. Oh, much agreed. It was his foreign policy decisions were a mixed bag. He had some genuinely very good ones.
Israel's capital. And Poland recently signed a $14.5 million deal to import Patriot missiles from Israel that are mostly made by Israeli arms manufacturers. Israel's basically,
Again, it's a good deal though.
Yeah, it's mutually beneficial to both countries. It's the sort of thing countries sign all the time.
Yeah, and also given the fact that their little invasive neighbor has about 9,000 nukes, I would want Patriot missiles.
Very, very rational.
basically looking to Eastern Europe as the future support base for its own Likud right-wing government. And Israel really has no place to condemn Poland or Ukraine or any other country that engages in banning certain recognitions of the Holocaust, because Israel's government has authorized its own legislation to forbid its Palestinian citizens from observing their own destruction, specifically the Nakba, which represented the organized campaign of ethnic cleansing from 1947 to 1948.
Well, I mean, again, that's kind of a mixed bag, because at this time, essentially, what was is that during this period, you had a period where a bunch of North African countries were expelling Jews. And so,
and like a lot of the expulsions happened in the context of a war, where like they felt it was either they would expel people who constituted a security threat, or they themselves would get genocided again 3 years after the Holocaust.
Well, yeah, and one of the things is that most of the Palestinians displaced during the Nakba, they never saw an Israeli soldier. What happened was that the Egyptian and Jordanian governments had evacuated them and saying, as soon as we defeat Israel, you guys can return to your homes. Well, Israel won the war, and now they can't return to their homes. And the Palestinians that stayed behind in their villages, they were granted citizenship by Israel, and they formed a quarter of the Israeli population, Israeli Arabs.
Yeah, no, and it's not only that, they just fled in fear, thinking, "Oh, we'll return later when the war is over." Like without even any Israeli soldiers in sight. But as it turned out, the Israelis won.
In the ongoing campaign of destruction.
by the way, technically the 48 agreement wasn't broken by the Israelis. They agreed to it.
Yeah, no, they agreed to form a state within those borders. And it was the Arabs that chose war. Instead, they didn't just say, no, we're not going to accept this. They launched the first attacks.
Against people who just came out of death camps, essentially.
Yeah, they were taking no chances with their security.
And dispossession of the Palestinian people. So those are really shared values between Israel and the Polish government. And those shared values are reflected in the Memorandum of Understanding.
On that historical point about the history of figures in the Zionist movement, prominent figures collaborating with anti-Semites, there's an episode of the Moderate Rebels podcast hosted by...
And something tells me it's a cringe podcast you should not use as a source. Especially since the Moderate Rebels, we already know what that's referencing.
Yes, it's making fun of the Syrian opposition.
Yeah.
Max Blumenthal and Ben Norton, with guests Joseph Mossad on this topic, and we'll link to that on the Real News website on this page. Max Blumenthal.
All right, so that was that video. So,
yeah, overall, just their usual tropes on Ukraine. Nazis, 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 Nazis. Look at these obscure Nazis we found. They're going to take over inevitably. That's why the Russian invasion is justified. I think I just summed up their whole idea of what Ukraine is like.
Yeah. Maybe I can find another one.
You see, guys, the country with the Jewish president is a Nazi state. Very true.
Yeah, the country that actually at one point had both a Jewish president and a Jewish prime minister and was the only country other than Israel where that was the case.
I'm trying to look up what Ben Knowlton says about Ukraine, but apparently every time I
It's
look it
just
up,
as cringe.
yeah, but also every time I look it up, I'm just getting a bunch of stuff from Latin America. It's like, that's not Ukraine, YouTube. I don't think Ukraine is in Latin America.
Okay.
Anyway, let's see if we can find. I'll see if I can find like a. It's minutes. It's days like this. Sometimes I wish I had great. What's Jacob, because he always knows where the cringe is.
Yes, maybe as a new routine, enlist him to help find it.
Yeah. Apparently he can. Okay, but this is a relatively short one, and by that means it's going to take us like an hour to analyze it, but still.
Still true.
Also, imagine if we read the comments too. Imagine how much more cringe that would get if we.
Oh gosh, that I try to avoid that these days.
Yeah. Oh look, not even my Wi-Fi wants to accept the fact that we're watching it.
No, I refuse. It's saying.
It's a little. I think it's refusing. Because it has it. Because if we look at it, it has the entire video process. I just don't think it wants to play it.
Yeah.
Or maybe if I restart it. Okay, maybe. This one really, they really don't want you. Okay. Okay, that's okay. Here we go. Honestly, I feel like what it was doing, it's giving us this warning, and if you're still watching, it's just like, try to warn you, man. Try to warn you.
You just didn't listen.
Yeah, but they don't understand. We know it's cringe. That's why we watch it.
Yes, we're nose diving into it once again.
If it made like good takes, then we wouldn't be watching it because it'd be not fun.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to dunk on anything.
Hi, I'm Max Blumenthal, and we're here today at the Senate Hart Building on Capitol Hill, where...
By the way, this is called Congress Welcomes an Actual Fascist as Not to See Violence. It's probably going to be like almost the same video as the last one, but maybe we might see something interesting. But since he's in DC, it says Congress welcomes an actual fascist.
So we'll have to see what this actual fascist is. I'm just guessing it's the way that, if it's anything like how they talk about Latin America, it's just some moderate liberal politician.
Actually, no, what he says he's in DC. I think it's him he's talking about.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that would be a controversy if Congress welcomed Max
Invited
Blumenthal.
this guy to speak before it.
Yeah. I'd actually, yeah, so
I'd protest against that.
No, seriously, okay, guys, in a video game, if Max Blumenthal is Evo speaking from Congress, you should just, and if that's happening, You have the full permission to go storm it in a video game.
In Fortnite.
Yeah, Fortnite.
The American Foreign Policy Council is hosting an event with 4 heads of parliament from Eastern Europe. One of those figures, Andrei Parubi, who is the Speaker of Ukraine's parliament, is the founder of 2 neo-Nazi parties, the Social National Party.
Okay, I'm actually going to look this guy up because I haven't heard of him. But I'm assuming there's all lies. But I think this is the guy, Andrei Parubi.
Yeah, he left all the neo-Nazi organizations in 2004.
Yeah. Let's take a look at what party he's currently in. He's part of European Solidarity, a liberal conservative Christian Democrat with some social democratic elements. The center-right party, as of now. You know,
it's sort of like how I guess they're calling just some moderate liberal politician a Nazi because he was one 20 years ago.
Oh, we have a little more spicy one. The party was a social conservative party.
Oh man, not even explicitly, huh?
Yeah. Which, I mean, to be fair, we do know some people who actually somehow think that social conservatives are the same as the gray zone.
Fair enough.
And Patriot of Ukraine. And what I want to do is ask why this group is legitimizing a figure like Parubi, especially when anti-Semitism and
Maybe you should ask Parubi. I want to see that. Parubi looks like a tough guy.
Yeah. Go up and talk to him.
Yeah, notice how he never will act. Like, he makes all these accusations. He never actually talks to the person who's making the accusations again.
It's just a hit job, first and foremost.
Yeah. Because, you know, either 2 things are going to happen if he talks to Parubi. Either one, Parubi's going to dispel his nonsense, and so he's either going to have to edit the interview to make him look bad, or he's just never going to upload it. Or B, Parubi's going to knock the shit out of him.
Yeah. Yes, that same with people like Juan Guaido. That's why they never interview him.
Yeah.
anti-minority violence is on the rise in Ukraine.
Before the June 27th event, Parubi held a friendly meeting with Representative Paul Ryan.
Oh, that's an old video. Representative Paul Ryan.
Oh man.
Wait, why did they just say Representative Paul Ryan? Wasn't this guy Speaker of the House?
Well, in 2014, yeah, he was not.
Oh yeah, that he was only like the. Because
Yeah.
that's only the second in charge of the Republican Party. Well, actually, I don't know. Congressional politics.
The Republican Speaker of the House of Representatives. Parubi was in town to urge Washington to take an even harder line against Russia.
Wait, what does it mean even harder line? What hard lines have we really taken against Russia other than sanctions?
Yeah, and this guy has a complete right to call for that, considering Russia is, invading his country.
Yeah, it's a nuclear power that's invading his country.
Yeah. No, and like most of our actions have been tough talk, nothing more.
Yeah, basically since 2004, this guy has not been involved in any neo-Nazi parties. And come to think of it, it may not even look like the... I'm just going to look through all the... Alright, so it looks like he was actually only part of one neo-Nazi party, the Social National Party of Ukraine, which had less than 1,000 members when he left. And
Yeah,
basically,
yet another tiny fringe group.
and it looks like that he kind of, in 2004, he joined All Ukraine, which was a liberal conservative. This guy seems like your average center right, the right wing person who used to have controversial opinions.
But in these people's eyes, if you're against Russia, that automatically taints you for life.
Yeah. Of course, if you're an actual neo-Nazi who supports Russia, they'll sweep all your anti-Semitism under the rug.
Yeah, they just look the other way, pretend you don't exist.
I mean, look how they talk about Gaddafi. One of the most anti-Semitic leaders on the planet. The guy started a war with a country because it recognized Israel.
No, and these people threw hissy fits and temper tantrums over Gaddafi getting his just desserts. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Putin understands only the language of force. And the language of diplomacy and negotiation is perceived by him as a sign of weakness.
He's got a point.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, 100% correct, as proven by what was going on at that time.
That there is open anti-Semitism on display in Ukraine.
Wait, is he actually? Are we going to see him get pummel charged by Peruvi?
He'll just edit it out.
Oh, well, that's the only reason I'm here. I want to see him get body slammed.
Yeah.
Like that governor in Montana who body slammed a reporter. It's like, that's the only reason I come watch these things.
Yes, these people would deserve it the most of all of them.
Anti-Roma violence. Do you think it was a good idea to invite the founder of two neo-Nazi parties, the Social National Party and the Patriot of Ukraine? I'm referring to.
By the way, I actually can't find anything about him being a member of the Patriot of Ukraine. I only found him being part of the Social National Party.
Which turned into Sabora, which is a pretty nationalist party, but they're not Nazi.
Yeah. Yeah, he left the party. Yeah, he was like 30, so I mean, maybe he just got wiser with age too.
No, like I'm looking up. Apparently, Perubi was at one point leader of Patriot of Ukraine, but again, he left that like almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it says here in 2010, he said he left the party because his views changed.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, man, if any neo-Nazi wants to not become a neo-Nazi, I think we should invite.
That's fine with me. They just gotta make it clear that they firmly rejected that.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they firmly reject what they used to believe, I don't have a problem accepting them back into polite society. Better accept them than try and make it seem like we are
You're
going
forever
to be
tainted or whatever.
Because I think if you help rehabilitate former neo-Nazis in society, it shows that, yeah, you can join back. If you taint them forever, then there'd be no incentive to leave.
And they just stay with that group forever.
Yeah.
Mr. Perubi.
Question seems to be addressed to the American Foreign Policy Council, and it would be a serious question if it was based on facts.
Owned.
If it was based on fact, then I guess it would be a serious question.
He didn't even mention that he was a former member. He just said, "Oh, we're just bringing on the founder of the Nazi Party." But he hasn't been part of that party for like forever. Like at the very least, put context and say he was former.
Former. But it's just in talking about there's anti-Jewish and anti-Roma pogroms raging in Ukraine. Yeah, those sentiments exist, of course. They existed back then. But just like there's no evidence they spiraled out of control that year.
Yeah, I mean, if any nation is going to take the prize for anti-Roma sentiment, it's going to be our country. Actually, I don't think any country in Europe has a strong pro-Roma sentiment.
Yeah, no, it's like that meme. Europeans when talking about American racial issues versus about the Roma.
Yeah,
I think you got that image in your head.
yeah, that's pretty much. Because with my grandfather, both of them are the Hitlers.
Oh, yeah.
The founder that you're talking about had a Nazi death threat over him. He was in a Nazi prison, and there is official U.S. government report at the end of World War II that exonerated his collaboration with the Nazis, so it's a non-issue. Next question.
Yeah, seems pretty accurate.
Yeah, just the facts there.
You mean, I'm pretty sure they took the microphone from Blumenthal because they didn't want to, create a scene. I don't know, these guys don't look like they could beat them up too much. I mean, they all look like nerds.
They seem pretty serious. They don't have time for clowns like the Gray Zone.
Yeah, send the goons after them, send the body.
Call in the bouncers.
Yeah.
He's also an admirer of Stepan Bandera, who is a Nazi collaborator.
Wait. Yeah, I can see it in that guy's look. The guy has a look of that, like, you meet outside in 5 minutes.
Yeah, like we said, I would pay actual money to watch that.
Yeah, I mean, especially this guy. This guy looks more muscular than Peruvian. I mean, this guy looks like. I mean, seriously, this guy looks like he's done like business with like 12 different mafia groups and betrayed them all.
Yeah. Getting a little tired of your commie bullshit, Max.
Yes.
Question back there.
The host not only ducked my question, he issued a bizarre non sequitur defense of Stepan Bandera, a World War II era Nazi collaborator and leader of a Ukrainian nationalist group that participated in the 1941 pogroms that finished off the Jewish population of Lviv.
In the Ukraine,
Wait,
Was he? I don't think he was directly involved in that.
I have to say it again.
Was he in a concentration camp during that time?
Exactly. Like, he was the leader of the insurgent army before the Germans came. When the Germans came, he proclaimed the independence of Ukraine. The Germans arrested him, sent him to a concentration camp, and from then on, he lost complete control of the Ukrainian insurgent army. So, when Babi Yar happened, he was in the camp. So it's like, why are they bringing this up? He was a horrible person. We can all agree, but his role has just been horribly exaggerated.
For decades, Ukraine has been torn between pro-Russian interests and those of the West.
West. That seems to really be only one actual option in that.
True, yeah. And it's like these people act as if Ukraine has no agency. Like everything that happens there is either puppet mastered by Russia or by the West.
Tensions boiled over in 2014 when then-President Viktor Yanukovych rejected an austerity package that would have roped Ukraine into the Western economy.
Yeah. Because they probably didn't think Russia was too reliant in 2013. Especially if you look at the Russian economy. Not exactly a reliable ally.
Definitely not. If you want to buy anything other than oil.
Yeah, I mean, even then, if you want to buy oil, the West is probably just going to get you a good Saudi deal. Oil is cheaper.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like
Yanukovych, who has kept Ukraine closely tied to Russia.
But Yanukovych was soon removed in a coup encouraged by Washington.
Coup? Is that what we're calling coup?
They did the meme again.
Literally, anything is a coup to these people.
Just keep saying it and it becomes true.
Yeah,
The big
literally,
lie.
the impeachment of Paraguay's president in 2012, coup. The 2018 Brazilian election, coup.
The impeachment of Brazil's president in 2016, a coup.
Yeah. The Spanish Lido ate a sandwich for lunch, coup. The sound that a bird made on the balcony, coup.
Hey, at least that one's objectively correct.
Yeah. Oh no, my girlfriend left me for a stronger man, coup.
I'm sure Ben gets that a lot.
People of Ukraine, this is your moment.
Since then, the U.S. has worked to oppose Russian influence and
There was McCain, the guy that the Gray Zone seems to really hate.
One of their boogeymen, like George W. Bush.
A lot of we just need to bring all like the boogeymen together. Except we can't do that with McCain now because kind of hard to. But everyone who's still alive, just bring them bring Cheney, Bolton, Bush, all together in a room. Rumsfeld, just have them meet the Gray Zone people.
Yes, the eternally plotting conspiracy. Yeah, that would be even funnier to watch than them meeting Perubi.
consolidate its own control over the country. So much so that it's been willing to bolster any and all allies that advance its.
Oh, yeah, I'm just going to say this. I think the reason why we don't see Blumenthal after that meeting is probably because that one guy probably chased him for a while.
Yeah. And he had to hide in a 7-Eleven or something.
Yes. Hell, for all we know, he's always doing that 7-Eleven.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Except, unluckily for the 7-Eleven owners, who is now having this guy talk conspiracy theories to, the random customers who walk in. It's 7-Eleven.
Excuse me, sir. Would you like to hear about the about the fascist coup in Ukraine and about how about Andrei Parubi?
Yeah, and to be fair to 7-Eleven, so you probably get something crazy like, I know what you're talking about. They chipped me. Well, I got it chipped, but I removed it. You want to see the scar?
No, sir. I just want to buy a Slurpee.
Its agenda. Even fascists like Parubi. Besides founding the Nazi.
Again, he's a former fascist that isn't really a fascist anymore.
The meme again.
He inspired Social National Party. Andrei Parubi helped start the Patriot of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Just imagine that. Bringing up someone's old photos from 1999 and saying, look at them. How is this not dishonesty at the worst level?
Actually, consider this. Consider someone like Oskar Schindler. He's people going to complain about him being a Nazi?
Or another one is Bela Kirai, who fought alongside the Hungarian Revolution in 1956. And he actually saved Jews as a Hungarian army officer during the war. But I've seen these very people hype up that he was, in the Hungarian army and use that to call him a Nazi.
Oh, they've called I think it's kind of speak of experience. I saw my great grandfather get called a Nazi, and because he simply served on the Hungarian front, and he doesn't like Soviets too much ever since he got shot.
Wow, who could imagine?
Yeah, he got shot and had to freaking almost die trying to escape Stalingrad. Of course he doesn't like the Soviets.
Who would under those circumstances?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
A racist militia that is playing a key role in the extreme.
But is it the Azov Battalion or is it the people, which racist militia are we sticking with?
Yeah, they just keep hyping this up again and again.
Also, again, why are they just censoring this guy's face? Like, I saw you.
I think they did a Google search about members of the organization and found this one, which had been already censored by the cops or something.
Yeah.
Extremism consuming his country. Here's a propaganda video posted to YouTube by neo-Nazis that shows Patriot of Ukraine members assaulting migrant workers.
Is there a particular reason why they just left in that music too?
And are they ever going to mention that he's not part of that party anymore? Like,
yeah.
What does he have to do with this far right?
Yeah, he's disavowed. He's disavowed this pretty thoroughly.
Yeah. If anything, he's probably weakening he's probably making the party more weak because of his.
Yeah, they probably hate him because he's cucked or whatever, however Nazis describe it.
Because think about it, if he wasn't ever a member of the party, then him denouncing it wouldn't even be that major of an event. But since he's denouncing it, it creates a lot more of it gives him a lot more leverage against his former membership.
Yeah, no, but again, these people don't care about all that.
The instability that followed from the 2014 coup has brought these fascist forces out into the open.
The Roma don't give a damn about the local population who've been living here for 200 years.
Fueled by decades of anti-Russian resentment, they're the vanguard of the...
Yeah, I wonder why they have anti-Russian resentment in Ukraine.
Beats me, and it's like they're trying to tie in these violent racist attacks with what happened during Maidan. It was something that happened beforehand, many times. In fact, these groups were stronger before Yanukovych was overthrown.
And also, again, these groups don't just exist in Ukraine.
Yeah, it's in France. In the US, there's even some of them.
The fight against pro-Russian separatists in the East.
Oh God, it's ANCAPs. Okay, now you convinced me to hate them.
Yes. Nope, I stand corrected.
Yeah, no, I think nope. Sorry, guys, but you have ANCAPs in your country. I'm on Team Russia now.
Yes, critical support to Putin against the Mick Wendy's militia, trademark registered.
Yes, I just don't want to attend another 1350 wedding.
It's a ephebophilia, you guys.
And they're flexing their muscle in Kiev by deploying a so-called national militia. Following the Senate event, I spotted Michael Carpenter, a former State Department official who helped encourage the 2014 Maidan coup in Ukraine alongside his boss, then Vice President Joe Biden. Did you think it was a good idea to bring Parubi, who's founded 2 neo-Nazi parties, to the Senate, and for Paul Ryan?
Let's see if we can think of any good people who have done terrible things and some terrible things. I mean, Churchill did some pretty terrible things, but also led his country to defeat Nazism.
True.
De Gaulle did some pretty terrible things, but he
Same
led
for FDR.
Yeah, like again, people do terrible things, but should that all? Like, you're not going to find a Samaritan out there. Like,
oh, yuck.
If you can find me a Samaritan, then honestly, I think you're selling horse oil.
Oh, yeah. Let's see what Paul Ryan has to say.
I don't think this is Paul Ryan, but
To meet with him.
Or whoever he's asking.
Look,
somebody
I
to
think
Paul Ryan.
Andrei Parubi is a conservative nationalist who is also a patriot, cares about his country. I don't think he has any neo-Nazi inclinations nor background. I mean, a lot has been made of this. Frankly, I think it's mostly Russian propaganda.
But it's
this is that to Max Blumenthal.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much the truth about who this guy is.
Yeah.
not just the Russians who've reeled in horror at Parubi's far-right background. Eugene Robinson, a columnist for the Washington Post, described the party that Parubi founded as openly neo-fascist. And the Atlantic Council, the NATO-funded think tank that currently employs Carpenter, recently acknowledged that Ukraine's got a real problem with far-right violence, and no, RT.
Damn you, YouTube.
Oh, but again, the point is, he's not a member of those parties.
Yeah. It's also like, again, we gonna ignore far-right violence in Russia?
Ah, yeah.
What he must
Just such one-sided focus.
I swear, the computer heard what he was saying, and now it's like processing what it meant by that.
He's like, no, it's going on strike. I refuse to take any more of this cringe.
Okay, let's see. Maybe I should have to. Okay, so, well, I mean, that might never resolve itself, but I guess we can see if it does.
If my guess, it's probably going to be more of the same.
Yeah. Honestly, do we even need to know what we already know what he's going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is just not going to go in. Come on, computer. We already know what he's going to say, but I guess since that's never going to pop up, I guess that's the video because I'm going to give my computer a break.
Yeah, no, I need to go walk my dog just about now, so
Right,
I will see you guys in the next thing.
Right?
Yes, thank you. Have a good night, both of you.
All of you, good night.